I thank the chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. I know it's been a long day today, and I am certainly grateful to you for your service to our country. And I wonder, I have some questions about FEMA, and as you may recall, we've spoken previously with respect to some natural disasters that we've faced in the state of Colorado, which I have the honor of representing in the Congress, particularly wildfires, and have very much appreciated the partnership with the department and your sub-agencies. Before I do that, I just want to give you an opportunity. I know it has been a very contentious hearing. To the extent that you'd like to clarify anything or perhaps expound on a prior answer that you didn't have ample opportunity to do so.
Congressman, I very much appreciate the invitation. I can't recall there were quite a number of times I have not been able to complete my responses, but I look forward to the opportunity to answer your questions.
I do think it's important, for those Americans who are watching to perhaps provide them with some context about the various ways in which you've served our country. Maybe you could just talk a bit about, before you were appointed and confirmed as Secretary of Homeland Security, what kind of work did you do?
Congressman, I am in, I think it's my 22nd or 23rd year of federal service. I joined the federal government because this country has given so much to my family. We came here seeking refuge from the communist takeover of Cuba. I began my federal service as an assistant United States attorney, as a federal prosecutor. I worked in that capacity for almost 9 years before I was appointed by President Clinton.
Fighting crime?
Yes.
Taking on organized crime, taking on cartels, taking on gang violence?
Yes. Smugglers, all sorts of crimes. It was the largest federal judicial district in the country, the Central District of California. I was then appointed and nominated, and Senate confirmed as the United States Attorney.
On a bipartisan basis?
Yes, it was unanimous. I returned to federal service in 2009 as the Director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and then moved from that position. After approximately 4 years, I became the Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security. I returned to federal service after that as the Secretary of Homeland Security. It's been about 22 years or so.
Well, I will say, Mr. Secretary, what I said previously. We're grateful for your service in law enforcement. And while we have many disagreements with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle from a policy perspective, perhaps ideological differences, I would hope that they would show you the appropriate respect and recognition of the work that you have done as a law enforcement officer, as someone who's worked in law enforcement for the last 25 years or so. I want to talk a bit about FEMA. As I mentioned, we had in Colorado some of the most destructive wildfires in our state's history, all happened in the last several years, and in particular in my district in Colorado, as you'll well remember, the Marshall Fire, which was the most destructive wildfire in the history of our state, economically and tragically. We lost the lives of 2 community members. There have been recent concerning reports that FEMA's Disaster Relief Fund, the DRF, which is the main funding source, as you know, through which you provide support to state, local, and tribal governments responding to natural disasters, is in danger of running out of funding before the end of this year, potentially even next month. I wonder if you can elaborate on what that shortfall is, when you predict it may run out of funding, and how that would impact the agency's ability to support communities in the event of a disaster, because of course there are many of us in Congress, myself included, who are championing efforts to ensure that this shortfall doesn't happen.
Congressman, we are seeing an increase in both the frequency and severity of natural disasters, hurricanes, tornadoes, fires, floods. And the Disaster Relief Fund that FEMA administers is the primary vehicle that enables FEMA, the Department of Homeland Security through FEMA, to distribute individual and public assistance to communities devastated by those natural disasters. If that were to run out, our ability to assist communities, our neighbors, our friends, our loved ones, to recover from and rebuild after a natural disaster would be virtually eliminated, almost eliminated. And we are hopeful that the Disaster Relief Fund will receive the requisite funding, because the money we expect to run out as early as perhaps August.
Well, I thank you, Mr. Secretary. I couldn't agree more, and we will do everything in our power to ensure that that fund is replenished. On that, you have my word. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your indulgence, and I yield back.